Alright guys, I know you're tired of the other beat 'em ups. Let's get to the elite stuff. And you know, people really prefer Roads of Violence 1, but I'm kinda more privy to Roads of Violence 2. Hey friends, I'm Pragmatik and welcome to the final video in the month of beat 'em ups. I wish there was more I could go over, but I just don't have time. So why not end this month with one of my favorite beat 'em ups of all time, Streets of Rage 2. Streets of Rage 2, I've gotta say, what a masterpiece. Honestly, any Streets of Rage title could be considered a masterpiece, but 2 is really just the crowning gem in my eyes. Everything comes together just so well to make just the magnum opus of a game. The game starts out about the same way any of them do, scrolling text over a well-done background of the city our heroes are trying to protect. Streets of Rage 2 puts us 1 year after the events of the first game, with Axel Stone, Blaze Fielding, and Adam Hunter liberating the city from the oppressive iron fist of the crime syndicate headed by Mr. X. But it seems now Mr. X is back and in his thirst for revenge, has kidnapped Adam in an attempt to lure Blaze and Axel back into Mr. X's clutches. Of course they can't say no to helping their friend, but this time they set out with some additional teammates. The colossal Max, who specializes in the art of wrestling, and Adam's kid brother, who seems adept in pure street fighting more than anything else. They once again set out on these roads of violence, these highways of action, these streets of rage. It's not cringe. And man, that is all that is required to really get you set up for a beat 'em up. Some quick scrolling text, a catchy tune to get you immersed, and then straight into the action. And pretty much every beat 'em up does this, but I feel that Streets of Rage really just makes it something truly special. And this is probably because out of all the soundtracks you might hear throughout your years of playing a beat 'em up after beat 'em up, it's hard to come close to the masterclass works of Yuzo Koshiro. I usually conclude these videos with a reflection on the musical aspect of these games, but it can't be understated that Streets of Rage hits as hard as it does because Yuzo Koshiro is involved. How often do you see the musician's name alongside the publisher in the opening credits? Every stage you enter is just coated with these house genre beats that Yuzo is known for. It's one of the bigger reasons that this game is so impressionable for me. That and the combat is just amazing. Despite only being the second game in the series, a lot was changed when compared to the first game, both visually and gameplay wise. Firstly, you'll probably notice that everything in Streets of Rage 2 is scaled up a bit, or at least a little more zoomed in. I much prefer this view, as characters come off looking more detailed and vibrant. And surprisingly enough, I feel like none of the art is lost either. There's so much more going on in the backgrounds that you hardly notice being a little more zoomed in and closer to the action. Plus with the original, the scale of things seemed a little off, like how big is this door in relation to the characters? Could just be a perception thing, but I like to think Wood Oak City really just likes its big, oversized, comical doors. Secondly, the combat has changed a bit. Players now have a flurry of moves they can do. Hitting forward twice followed up with a punch will have Axel dashing forward with a grand uppercut, giving you some breathing room when faced with a lot of enemies. Your characters also have a special move that acts as a combo attack, staggering even bosses and doing a nice bit of damage. The only trade-off being a small portion of your health to perform. I do wish that the game would spare you the health drain if your attack didn't connect with anyone, but that's not the case. This seems to have replaced the first game's special of calling in the police for some assistance that can only be described as overkill. I can only imagine the reports that had to be filed for firing an incendiary round or a Gatling gun into a crowd of people. Just seems a little excessive to me, but you are going against an entire crime syndicate, so who knows? I think I like the addition of moves more so than the limited special move from the first game. Kinda gives you more variety in your attacks and helps you deal with a crowd of enemies or a particularly hard boss in different ways. And while it does suck, I understand that without the risk of losing your health for a powerful combo, this game might be too easy. I don't even know if I believe my own statement there, because this game is anything but easy. But the first few levels might make you think it is. I can't overstate the joy I feel when playing this game. And for those first few levels, you feel like an absolute bruiser, smashing your way through a variety of foes that surprisingly don't palette swap as much as other games usually do. No, you'll be facing one unique enemy after the next, and you'll feel pretty invincible while doing so. At least until you enter those last few stages. One thing you may not often see in a beat 'em up is the need to learn how to deal with certain enemies. For a lot of games, it's just punch them until they die. And that is the case for a lot of fiends in Streets of Rage 2, but as you progress, a lot of foes get a little more resistant to the usual flurry of your attacks, with some bosses being so quick that you can only hit them at a certain time, and others just outright punishing you for trying to offset them with a special attack. It's a steep curve that will see those lives you so proudly stacked up quickly decline until you're either using a continue with the same character, or trying out a new one, which I did here with Blaze. That was until I got wrecked again and went back to Axel. Therein lies another feature that separates itself from other beat-em-ups, at least the last two ones I reviewed. Not only does each character vary in fighting style, but all of their actual stats are different as well. Axel comes off as the most balanced, second to Blaze, where Max feels a lot slower but also feels more powerful, and Skate is faster but arguably much weaker. This helps to establish a character that best works for you. For me, it has always been Axel, but learning each character is fun as well. But I think that with a format like this, you'll always find yourself finding a favorite. But even with your favorite character, Streets of Rage 2 will still give you a run for your money. With the aforementioned threat of smarter enemies means being more cautious, because while you can rack up lives if you do well enough, you only get so many continues before it's game over entirely. And with later stages bringing back bosses with smarter AI, you're in for a lot of hurt if you play too recklessly. It is of my own opinion that Streets of Rage 2 is one of the greatest beat-em-ups of all time, and it's the stylistic art choices, sound design, music, and just combat that make it all so perfectly done. The difficulty does not discourage the addictive gameplay Streets of Rage is known for. Each character having their own build and feel to them allows a playstyle for everyone, and it's a format that just seems to work so well even if it doesn't deeply deviate itself from other games of the same genre. Whether it be the fast-paced decision making on which enemy to fight first and what move best to deal with them, to trying other approaches like relying on a nearby weapon, it's a format so simple yet so pleasant that it keeps you coming back for more, even if that means seeing a few game overs here and there. I don't really know what it is about Streets of Rage 2's opening presentation that gets you hooked from the get-go, because it isn't like it does anything different from the other two games that I talked about this month. It's just how well it does that presentation. Yuzo Koshiro's opening theme, Go Straight, is the perfect choice to get your journey started. It's got those classic elements of house that I love, and that tempo never slows, keeping you pumped and ready to get through the stage. And the artistic sight of these familiar city streets bathed in blue light and dancing with neon accents across the stores really immerses you into Oakwood City. The sound effect of punches and screams sound loads better than those of the first game. Punches seem to connect and echo throughout the city streets one after the other. And just a playful jab here, but even the defeated enemies sound better as they let out a yell that's actually bigger and longer than the half-second soundbite of the first game. Powerfully rhythmic soundtrack that is Yuzo Koshiro's bread and butter. And by now you're probably like, Prag, my man, just take the man to dinner. Well, believe me, I would if I could. But this legend of a composer has put this entire series under his wing, working all the way up to the recent released Streets of Rage 4. Yuzo even contributed a few tracks to the title as well. It's just not Streets of Rage without at least some involvement of Yuzo's, because the music of Streets of Rage is a third of the game. The art style, the gameplay, and the music are all so expertly worked on that it all flows with one another, something that you rarely, if ever, see in a beat-em-up, at least to this degree. Now if you're new to the series, you may be asking, is the second game really the best? Well, that I do believe is up to personal opinion, because every Streets of Rage is pretty phenomenal. And while my good friend Iceferno may argue that the original was the best, I gotta give my vote to 2. You know, hence the video. But hey, no discredit towards Iceferno. He's got good taste, and even produces music on par with the Streets of Rage series, and may have even composed the opening to this video. So maybe go check out his Streets of Wrath albums. I'll leave a link below if you find yourself craving more Streets of Rage type beats. But whether you're a fan of the second like me, or prefer the original like Iceferno, you're not wrong, because all of them are worthy of being your favorite. This is one of the rare times I can look at a game and see it with little to no fault. To call out the spike in difficulty near the later half of the game would be one thing, but it's hard to really slam a beat 'em up for the sheer crime of being difficult, especially when the spike in difficulty is more of a learning curve than an occurrence of being overwhelmed by impossible odds. Its ramped up difficulty is part of the challenge and thrill of Streets of Rage, to overcome those challenging odds no matter how plentiful they may be. Streets of Rage 2 has been one of those games that have stayed in my top 10 favorite games of all time. It's a series and a title that stands above the rest and still really withstands the test of time. And while you could start with this one and enjoy it all the same, I would recommend trying them out in order and discovering which one may be your favorite. And even if it isn't Streets of Rage 2, I'd still love to hear which one you think is your favorite. Streets of Rage 2 is one of the finest beat-em-ups as well as one of the best games I've played in my years, and as such I feel it was a great end to the month of beat-em-ups. Thanks for watching my review on Streets of Rage 2. If somehow you aren't satisfied with the beat-em-ups listed throughout this month, then I suggest checking out my other videos on my channel. I've covered a lot and would love for you to check out more if you'd like. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video and consider subscribing if you're new. Have a great day and keep it practical.